Hello and welcome back wherever you are, whenever you are. Time and space being the same thing as we know. Okay, so my favorite word in a conversation is the word exactly, because what it means is that somebody has said something that chimes with the other person's experience, and they are right there. And it then gives you a springboard to say exactly and then move things further along. And I have to say that so the Endangered Alphabets project has been going now for 15 years. And most of that time, it was pretty much a solo endeavor, with the exception of Alec Julian, the person who's behind the technology today, who is also a wonderful book designer and has designed all my books. Over the last couple of years, though, I have met some wonderful people who are it's as if the continents are sort of drifting back together again. It's like reverse Pangea. And these are people have massively enjoyed talking to and learning from. But there are two or three in particular who are unusual in that they are thinking about the same things I'm thinking about from the same point of view. So what I'm doing, having discovered, in a sense, so many of these minority writing systems, is then to ask the question, wow, well, if all of that is true, what does that say about writing itself? And many people are asking that question from other points of view, from historical points of view, from technological points of view. But I'm thinking about it as a writer. And so when I come across somebody else who is asking this question as a writer and as somebody who is interested in the experience of writing, the sensation of writing, the phenomenology of writing, that is just incredibly exciting. And I'm delighted to say that our next guest is one of that small group of people with whom I say exactly all the time. So I'd like to introduce Alice Mazzilli, who I think it would be reductive to try and introduce her by labels and terms. And so I'm going to say, Alice, come and join us. And I think you'd better tell people not only what you do now, but how you have got to where you're doing what you do now.
Hi, Tim, and hi, everyone. First of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's been a great day, so inspirational to hear all the different talks and different points of view on writing and different writing systems. So thanks a lot for organizing all of this. Yeah, I do actually have a issue expressing what I do because I consider myself a writer. But if I say that I'm a writer, people think that I'm writing text. I do also that quite recently because I never done it before. But I specialize in calligraphy, let's say. I worked and I'm trained as a professional calligrapher, but I don't feel like it's the only thing I do because it's not just beautiful writing. It's more writing because of writing. I enjoy that. And also enjoy when people write. So kind of make people writing and kind of like force them to write. So what Tim and myself been talking a lot about, it's the actual act of writing. I do often think that there is no writing is everything. There's not yet a distinction between the act of writing and the trace. What the act of writing leaves as a trace. So that's what interests me, and I've been approaching in many different ways through performance art, painting, graffiti. Actually, maybe I can show you some of my work. I trained in formal calligraphy. This is like one of my latest work. So here is my kind of formal calligraphy training, which taught me a lot, to be honest, about how to deal with letter form in general and different material. So what I learned from working on more commercial project, meaning like project for clients, addressing envelopes, place cards, and all of that, it's that sometimes you're presented with material that you wouldn't expect. So you have to mix and match what you have, the inks you have with the paper, and there's that kind of like physical interaction that sometimes you cannot fully control, that can allow you to experiment and find a different dimension in what you do. So that's what I learned from it, and obviously the technicality and being confident with the letter forms. After years of writing formally, I decided to approach the canvas. And here, what I found is the way of creating a word around the letters. So it's a surface that is not just flat, like I would use on a paper. It has the dimension. And that dimension kind of like gave me the chance of creating a word. So using colors and all different things. Also, my background is, I have to say, it's from graffiti. So like the first time I approached writing as a more of a, let's say, outside of school, it has been through graffiti in the 90s, where writing on walls was the new thing. It was everywhere. And as I was a very shy child, my only way of communicating was through writing. So seeing that writing on the wall or outside, it was something that for me was really attractive. And I started practicing it. So this way of like going, then I went, from kind of an informal writing, I went through a formal writing with my calligraphy training, to go back again to the informal that I'm trying to portray in my canvas and in my graffiti. So here it's a page of my book just to show another different kind of way that I use in writing. So I also use writing a lot for annotation for all my research. It's very important for me to be able to write down my thoughts in annotation. I use it like this as a sort of poems. I do performances, which I will talk about a little bit more later. I do this interplay, let's say, of different letter forms of all the different styles I studied. And this is like, for me, a very natural way of writing. I just write, as obviously it takes longer than writing with a biro, but for me, it's a very fluid form of writing with a nib. That's what I was talking about before, that you couldn't see that my formal calligraphy regarding work. There's my graffiti work, which, by the way, my graffiti tag is Seshat, which is Egyptian, has Egyptian connotation, is the goddess of writing. which is not very well researched. So it's something that for me is quite important more to promote in my own way. And there's another one of my canvases where I was saying that I'm kind of like trying to recreate the words that I feel like I have around. A little bit about the performances, I think I would like to talk about. I call, as we had before as well, a performance with music. I also been experimenting with music in a performance which I call jammigraphy, which is jamming and calligraphy. So in this performance, I interact with people in an event. Usually it's different. It can be a workshop, can be an event. So I try to interact with them, gathering words or writing with the participants. And the rule is to write from music, not from language. So it doesn't really matter the meaning of what you're writing. It's more about the rhythm, following the rhythm of the music by using the letter forms. I've always been using letter forms as words. And then all these words together might mean something, might not. So yeah, that's like picture of like some of these performances I did. Here is with like a band, just writing directly on a wall. So for me, like the freestyle and the interpretation of the moment, is a very important factor in my work. I cannot prepare. It's it's something I accepted, and I just cannot prepare work. This is another performance, and there's like the results that I can never know what exactly can happen or what will be the results. The new performance I'm doing quite a lot is called the Walking Wall, which is basically me dressing up in white and ask people to write on me a word. And this is another performance that's kind of like forcing people to write, to make a movement. It's about the pure act of writing as a shared experience. That's really the whole point of the performance. And I see myself a little bit as a wall that walks around, and it goes a little bit against the idea of the wall being something static as a dividing factor. Is more something that brings people together and brings words together in a different way. So here there's like a few shots from some videos of the performances I did. And I was surprised people write very nice things on me, and is very enthusiastic to write in general. Well, here is another canvas, some more canvases that this is work on paper instead. It's more like a calligraphy on paper with different tools. So each tools and surface create a different word. That's what I'm interested about. There's another work on paper, some close-ups. And there's another one, which is the latest one I did, is a print plus annotation about what for me it's Interowriting, which I haven't been talking about yet, by the way. Yeah, I'm happy to continue with our talk and discussion on things.
Great, because you've already raised like 613 different ideas that I think.
I know. I'm
yeah,
just
right.
concentrating on one thing.
Let me pick up on one which touches on a couple of things that you just showed. And that is the idea that the question is writing a private act or a public act. So one of the things that I discovered quite recently is that in Pompeii, which obviously has this great ability to kind of capture a civilization and a method of living that otherwise we wouldn't have access to. Everybody wrote on walls. They wrote on exterior walls. They wrote on interior walls. They wrote things that were personal or that were profound. They wrote quotes from poems. They just said, "I was here," all this kind of stuff. And I thought, this is very interesting in terms of how we think about writing, which of course is like my continual question. And I thought the only time I'd ever seen anything like that was when I was in Prague during the Velvet Revolution as a journalist. And what had happened was that as soon as it became clear that the authorities were not going to crack down on every gesture of dissent, this is obviously immediately before the fall of the communist government, people started plastering up on the walls downtown what were called testimonials. And these were typed up by and large, and they were accounts that people had been afraid to say for decades. My husband was taken in the middle of the night, in 1967, and I haven't seen him since. All of these things. And it was fascinating to see the public space being used as, and I use the word advisedly, a forum. Because, obviously the forum was originally a marketplace in addition to being a place where ideas were exchanged. And it was sort of a slap across the face to think, good grief, I hadn't even realized how we think of the public space and public walls, for example, as off limits. And it's really only when somebody starts using those walls for some kind of expression that we realize that we've made that assumption. So my question to you is, when you started transferring your writing / art, whatever, into the public space and you started doing work on walls, what kinds of freedom did that give you?
I think is the act of interacting with a space that is public. So as the graffiti in Pompeii is an act of claiming that space for yourself, of existing, like of claiming your existence in that space. And I believe it's even more important than the actual meaning of the words. The act is what is important. I am gonna interact my body and my actions with the surface, and is why I really enjoy, for example, to write on all different surfaces. It can be paper, can be wood, can be walls, can be fabric, canvas, and every time. Also, the words that I create with my writing, it has a different dimension because of my interaction with it. I'm very interested in all the new quantum physics points of view on things, of interaction, that if you are part of an action, of an experiment, you will affect it.
Right.
And I like to live with that kind of idea in mind. And it's the same in writing. So if you are putting yourself in that position, you kind of confirming your existence. So yeah, I think it's more about the action than the actual meaning.
Right. And what you also just pointed out is that another thing that we don't think about now, we don't interrogate our own writing about, is how the range of surfaces and materials has actually shrunk over time, and we've sort of taken that for granted. So in Indonesia alone, for example, you find writing on bones and on buffalo horn and on bark. And so in all of those cases, they're interacting with these different materials for different purposes. Sometimes these are charms, sometimes these are divination, sometimes these are genealogies, sometimes they're magic. And that relationship with the physical world is something that it seems to me we have drawn away from step by step over the course of time. And you're kind of getting back into those relationships.
Yeah, I believe like technology can really help with this. I'm not one of those calligraphers that is against technology. Actually, I think we have a huge potential now because as a Western writer and using the Latin alphabet, I find that it's a bit restrictive to use writing just in order to be legible. There's like so many different writing systems that we're not completely considering. And now with the digital revolution, we can translate different languages very quickly. We can create, as we saw throughout the day, use so many different scripts and create a translation quite fairly quickly. So there's not anymore this need of using writing system just for legibility. It can be used as an act, as a part that as an interaction that you have with signals coming from inside of your body and what's outside. The words outside is like, as it was said today as well, like this connection that we can have with the world we inhabit. And the world we inhabit is expanding through our digital sphere. So it can be used and approached in many different ways.
And that is the perfect segue. So now you have to tell people what interrowriting is.
Yeah, so I've been trying to find. I love to come up with words, basically. So as I found it difficult to describe what I do, thanks to a curator which I met here in Italy, I started researching on neuroscience, cognitive science, quantum physics, philosophy. And something I came across, it's a theory called interoception, which is sort of perception, but a bit more specific, which is our interpretation of signals coming from inside of us and outside of us. It's basically replying to the question, how do you feel? Because when you ask, how do you feel? You have to rely on your perception of how you're feeling inside and how the words that surrounds you is. Because you might feel great inside, but outside of you, there's building burning. I don't know. So you always have to be concerned with your words. You're not separate from it. So that's what interests me in this perspective. So I defined interrowriting as a process which keeps into consideration our interpretation of those signals. So what I'm really interested in is the interpretation and how it can be expanded through writing. So many writing systems have these points of view on writing. It's just that us as Western writers right now, we kind of got away from it a little bit. Historically, there's like many reasons, but now that handwriting doesn't need to be legible anymore in order to communicate. We can also rediscover this side of things. So that's what Interowriting is trying to advocate for.
So I think it's Poulet has put up this great quote here. The letters of people are inside the flesh.
That's beautiful.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's like there's so many ways of approaching writing because it's something that is starting from the body, handwriting, and also the shape that we create. They are written, even if we use a computer, it still like starts from there. And it's really important to keep the side of things as a manifestation, like manifesting what we want and who we are, really.
And so this is a subject that we talked about a lot at the WEWD conference in Cambridge, is the whole notion of the embodiment of writing, or writing as an embodied act. And there are so many, you've already talked about using the rhythm of writing by writing with music. And as you were talking about that, I was thinking about the fact that this is a subject some of you already know, but I've decided that my next book, which is about calligraphy, I'm going to write by hand. And what I've discovered is that it's with different materials, with different tools rather, the rhythm is completely different. And if I'm using a nib, I cannot get up a good rhythm. And so consequently, my whole body starts feeling anxious. Whereas if I sharpen a pencil by hand, so it has these different facets to it, and I find a good facet, then I can write much, much more comfortably and more rhythmically. And the process of thinking is driven by that comfort. I mean, this is the stuff you're talking about, isn't it? It's not just writing. It is that relationship between the body and the mind and the process of writing, that all of those are affecting each other.
Yeah, definitely. And I think would be very interesting in all for example, the new script that have been presented today, one by Pule and Juan, to also have a process of handwriting them. Like I would be very interested in looking into that, because it can live together. It's not that like one has to exclude the other. I think it's just like different way of expressing it. If anything, it can enrich it. You can really, like for example, Chinese calligraphy or Japanese calligraphy is very emotional. Like you can really feel the emotions just by the strokes. And in a way, you don't really need to know the meaning of the piece. Or if you want to, like now it's very easy. Like you can like get pictures. In the world we live in, I don't think it matters anymore as much, the legibility of handwriting.
And this goes back to your point about graffiti. So when I was a teenager, a young adult, it was an era of protest, and the tradition was that you would write legible things on the wall, like "Stop War," or something that that people could read, and you felt that by expressing your opinion, you might actually affect some kind of change. So one of the really interesting things that's happened since then, especially 25, 30 years later, Perhaps because people stopped believing that the exchange of views or discussion was actually going to do any good in the political realm, you now have a tradition of graffiti that is essentially asemic, where your tag can be read by you, possibly not by other people. And the fact that you have made that mark is the political statement rather than the meaning of what you've written.
Yeah, definitely. And on the subject of tagging, I believe that is a very important phenomenon for the evolution of the Western writing alphabet because it's the first time that he allowed the cursive being cursive. Um, it led the form into a lot of freedom, which is not related to legibility as it has been in the past, contrary to other scripts like the Arabic script or many other scripts like Japanese, Chinese. So it's what I consider like the cursive, the true cursive form of the Western phonetic alphabet, the tagging, in my opinion.
So when you say cursive in that particular sense, you're not simply talking about neatly written letters with ligatures connecting them. You're talking about something that is much more about the kind of the continuous movement of the body.
Yeah, yeah, it comes from running, correre, that in Latin is running. So it's something that it's more of a rhythmic kind of movement. You know, it has to be moving in order to have the name, the cursive name.
Right.
And it has to show that there's movement,
And
because
speaking
the
and
trace of a
right.
movement.
And speaking of running, I was actually I was interviewing a Filipino American graffiti artist a couple of days ago, and he said, I it was literally running, right? I had to do it quickly because I could get arrested for doing what I was doing. So, as you were saying, you don't plan what you do. He was saying, you also don't slow down while you're doing it. It has to be sort of that sweeping, continuous gesture so that at any given moment you can turn and run.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's just like something that happens so spontaneously uh, because of a series of reasons, and that's the power that I believe that the writing form has. That hasn't been in the Western phonetic alphabet for a really long time. Um,
Okay, so I'm just going over to the chat. We've got all kinds of interesting things in the chat, and a reminder from Olesh to make sure that we actually record the chat and keep it. So,
yeah.
Alec, that's your expertise. Um, and Daniel Jacob said, interesting remark on materials and the rhythm of writing. With epigraphic chiseling, you similarly get into an acoustic-based rhythm. And obviously, with the carving that I do, rhythm is extremely important as well. And that really speaks to, that whole body experience of writing.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I think rhythm is essential to writing. Like I think it's what all the writing system have in common. It doesn't matter if it's lower, like if it's carving, if it's keyboard that it's using your hands to thread to make threads. It still needs a rhythm. That's what all the writing system have in common. Even typefaces, they have to be rhythmical somehow, because it has to have a certain feel to it and harmony.
Yes. And
In
and
that
again,
way,
sorry, go ahead, go ahead.
no, no, in that way, it's like quite similar to creating music because it can be performed or it can be composed. So there's the performance factor of writing, which is more like someone performing notes. and there's the composing side of it.
Grant asks, have you considered incorporating letter forms from non-Latin scripts in your work?
Yes, I've done it a few times. My inspiration is very much on different writing system. I'm even thinking of trying to use some kipu, obviously my own way. No, I wouldn't know if it's the right form, but it's still something that's very much about the fabric and how a fabric and can tell a story.
It's interesting you should say that because I think maybe the second time we had a meeting with the Sign and Symbol Research Group, there was, I believe I'm remembering this correctly, a young woman who was a poet who had decided to start writing poetry in embroidery. So the act of writing, it wasn't preceded by, you know, a pencil or a pen. It was embroidered sort of into the fabric from the get-go. And she said it had completely changed her poetry. And, you know, I can totally see that.
Yeah, also like for me, for example, I trained in formal calligraphy, so I spent like 6 years just training on the letter forms, and most of the calligraphy workshops I used to go, they were asked for to bring a poem or like a text. And for me, like really the game changer when I started writing my own words, even if it was just one word, or if it were words that would not even make sense together. The fact of like just writing your own text, it made it different. Like it completely changed my experience in writing personally.
I've sort of found that in the very early stages of trying to write this book by hand, because if you're copying a text, and as you say, many calligraphers start out or even continue by copying a favorite text. That's one set of skills. But if you're trying to compose or just allow your mind to run around wherever it can, which is, of course, what produces the best writing, then to do that and write at the same time is actually much more challenging. And I did this thing which I posted on social media. Some of you may have seen it, where I wrote a grocery list. And I thought, whoa, my handwriting looks really good on that grocery list. And then I started writing some ideas about what that actually meant, what that actually said about writing. And my writing just completely fell apart because there were too many different things going on at the same time. So I'm really kind of interested also in what you do mentally and physically to ready yourself for the act of writing.
Yeah, I think that's really important because is the posture, like how relaxed you are, the focus you have, they're all like factors that are very important to the act of writing. And I believe it's something that should really be taught in school when you start writing, when you learn how to write. Especially, I think in the Western culture, it's really not taught anymore. Like there's saying of not teaching handwriting anymore because it's not needed, but it's not needed for legibility. But as a experience, as a human being, it's something that is so huge and so important. It's part of human nature. So taking it out, it seems like very unnatural thing to do. It's just that I think if it's something that is taught more, not just as you have to be legible, more as an experience and as an embody, even like the movement can be bigger at the beginning. Doesn't need to be with pen and paper. why not experiencing the movements in a more holistic way?
Yes, in fact, Olesh talks about the fact that he used to teach Chinese writing with a mop, so that
Yeah,
people had this thing that was big, that was kind of gestural, that they couldn't control to the degree to which we, as like 6-year-olds, are supposed to be controlling our writing device. But on the other hand, allowed that much more kind of embodiment in the whole process, and that much more fun, frankly.
yeah, exactly. And like if you implement things like sitting properly, having a proper chair, especially if you have to write the book by
Yes.
hand, I will advise you to be very mindful of your position when you're writing and sit up, just take breaks, stretch the hands, like really there's lots of things that you can implement to make the writing process more enjoyable.
And I think that's not just the writing process in terms of, like, for example, when you're learning classical guitar, they teach you how to relax your body because otherwise you get, lots of serious physical pain from practicing. I think this also has to do with this issue of something that is almost never talked about again, which is, and this is part of your interrowriting question, which is how are the act of thinking and the act of writing combined? And again, if you think of writing as simply the production of text or, the kind of the memorization of material and putting them down, you're not asking the question, how do I bring the best of myself to what I write? And for me, I know that even if I do the things you say and I've got the right tool and the right surface, I should never try and write for more than about 20 minutes because that is kind of like a cognitive breath. Beyond that, I'm going to be either exhausted or my mind is going to start like wandering elsewhere. And I'm really interested in the kind of the mental part of interoception. And I'm wondering what thoughts you've been having about that.
Right, so I've been researching lately actually about dopamine and how it's very affecting all of us in our society right now because we all developed small addiction because of the pleasure pain releasing of the dopamine, and it's so common now to find ways of finding artificial pleasure, let's say. So what I've been researching, it's that writing is a way of creating dopamine in your brain, which is healthy. So because it involves a sort of like sacrifice that you have to do, which is sitting properly, like same as doing exercise. Is that healthy way of releasing dopamine that will stay for longer in your brain. And it's the same way with writing. So that's all research, scientific research that's been done on the benefits of writing. And also having like a connection with yourself and the words. So it's a way of being a bit more conscious and aware of who you are, what you want to do. At least for me, it's been, the base of my life ever. So when I see people enjoying writing, for me, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. So the good news is that the workshop that I'm running at 3:30, in other words, in about 45 minutes, is actually going to take many of these ideas and invite people to put them into practice. So I'm hoping, Alice, you'll be able to stay with us for that. If not, you'll be there in spirit. But Yes, all of this is fine in theory, but like, how does it work in practice? So thank you so much for all of these thoughts and suggestions and analyses. I am going to move into the little intermission break now between now and the next session. I have some books to give away, so stick around for that. I really want to stress that World Endangered Writing Day is not funded by grants or by commercial sponsors. It is funded to the extent that it is by individual donations. And if you found this interesting and worthwhile and you would like to support it and the work that we need to do to continue editing the recordings, sending out the books, etc., please go to endangeredwriting.world and hit the donate button and help us out. If you would like to know more about the rich array of writing systems from around the world, we invite you to go to endangeredalphabets.net, which is the online atlas of endangered alphabets, or now in print, available on Amazon, and also one of the books I've been giving out, the print edition of the Atlas of Endangered Alphabets. A lot more about calligraphy is in the Endangered Alphabets blog, including tons of links to amazing calligraphers doing minority script calligraphy from around the world. So if you go to endangeredalphabets.com and click on the blog link, there is a ton of stuff there. And also, if you would like to help join our community of people who are interested in endangered writing and preserving it, sustaining it, then I'm going to be sending out an invitation to everybody who's registered for the conference. Let us know what your interest is, what your areas of expertise are, all that kind of thing. And that is it. We're now going to take an 8-minute break, and then we'll be back with the question, what if there were a global nonprofit interested in sustaining cultures around the world and their languages and writing systems? And turns out there is. So I will see you in... Alec has just put some links up on the chat. Thank you very much. I will see you in 8 minutes.